My name is Logan, and what I'm about to tell you changed my life in ways I never saw coming. 2 years ago, I was in love, completely, wholeheartedly, with a woman I thought was my future. I gave her everything, my time, my trust, my heart. But in a single night, everything I believed about love, loyalty, and our relationship shattered. Hello, everyone. Thank you for joining us. Today, I want to share another touching story with you. Please subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. It motivates us to create more quality content for you. Let's get started. Back then, I thought that if you truly cared for someone, treated them with respect, and showed them unwavering commitment, they'd do the same. I believed love worked that way. But life has a cruel way of teaching you otherwise. The woman I adored made a choice, one that showed me with brutal clarity exactly where I ranked in her life. And it wasn't where I thought. So stick around, because by the time I'm done, you'll understand why some people don't deserve second chances. I've never been the loudest person in the room. I value real, meaningful connections over fleeting attention. Amber, though, she was the opposite. She had this energy that pulled people in, made them want to be near her. She was magnetic, and I loved that about her. I loved how different we were, how we balanced each other out. She was the spark. I was the steady flame. I had opportunities to leave our city, better jobs, offers that would have set me up for success in ways I could barely imagine. But I stayed. I stayed because I loved her, because I thought we were building something together, planning for a future that, in my mind, felt solid. I imagined a home, maybe kids one day. I was all in, and I truly believed she was too. But I was wrong. That realization hit me on what should have been one of the happiest nights of my life. It was Amber's birthday, the anniversary of our relationship, and the night I planned to propose. I had everything ready. A reservation at a quiet, upscale restaurant. A table tucked away for just the two of us. I had gone over my words 1,000 times, picturing the way her face would light up, the way she might tear up when I slipped the ring onto her finger. I was nervous, sure, but more than anything, I was excited. This was supposed to be our moment. At the last minute, she bailed. Just like that. No conversation, no apology, just a casual, "Oh, I'll make it up to you. We can do dinner another night." Instead of celebrating our anniversary, she chose a party, one filled with her high-status friends, the kind of people who made her feel important. I called her, hoping maybe she'd reconsider, that she'd realize what tonight meant. Instead, she brushed me off like I was overreacting. "It's just dinner, Logan. Don't be so dramatic." But it wasn't just dinner. She had no idea what she was throwing away. No idea that I had a ring in my pocket, ready to offer her everything. And in that moment, something inside me broke. That night, I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, trying to make sense of it. How could someone I loved so deeply make me feel so unseen, so small? I had given her my heart, and she had chosen a night of drinking and empty conversations over me. The next morning, I woke up with a weight in my chest. I had cried myself to sleep the night before, something I hadn't done in years. But even after all that, some foolish part of me still held on to hope. Maybe she'd wake up, realize what she had done, and try to fix it. Maybe she'd call. Maybe she'd text. Something. But as the hours dragged on, my phone stayed silent.
No epalegi. No explanation. No regret.
By the time the sun dipped below the horizon, it was painfully clear. If she cared, she would have reached out. If she had even an ounce of remorse, she would have tried. But she didn't. And that silence, that told me everything I needed to know. I wasn't going to waste another second waiting on someone who didn't value me. Right then and there, I made my decision. I was done. I scrolled through my phone, found her number, and deleted it. Then I blocked her on everything. Instagram, Facebook, Twitter, gone. I erased every picture, every message, every trace of her from my life. If she didn't want to make me a priority, she wasn't going to have access to me anymore. I wasn't leaving the door open for her to waltz back in when it was convenient. With Amber out of the picture, I had to face an even bigger truth. There was nothing keeping me here anymore. I had turned down job offers in the past because I didn't want to leave her behind. But now, Staying felt pointless. The city that once held so much meaning now felt empty. I wasn't even going to wait for another offer. I told myself, when I get there, opportunities will come. I had spent too long letting life happen to me. Now it was my turn to take control. I was done letting life happen to me. It was my turn to take control. That night, I sat my parents down and told them everything. How I had spent weeks planning to propose, imagining our future together, only to watch it all fall apart in a single night. I told them how Amber had thrown it away without a second thought, trading our anniversary for a party that, in the grand scheme of things, meant nothing. My mom's face crumpled with heartbreak. My dad? He didn't say much, but I saw the disappointment in his eyes, not in me but in Amber. In the way she had treated me like I was disposable. They stood by me, fully supporting my decision to leave. They knew I needed to start over. But when they asked where I was going, I kept the details vague. I didn't want Amber showing up later with some empty apology, acting like a few well-placed words could undo the damage she'd done. I needed a clean break. The next morning, I packed my bags and walked out of that house with no intention of ever looking back. The first person I reached out to was Marcus, an old schoolmate who had moved to a bigger city a few years earlier. We hadn't spoken in ages, but when I told him what had happened, he didn't hesitate. "Come crash at my place for a while," he said. Just like that, I had a landing spot. When I got there, I barely spoke about Amber, or what I'd been through. Marcus could tell I was carrying something heavy, but he didn't push, and for that I was grateful. The last thing I wanted was to sit around dissecting the past. I didn't want to talk. I wanted to work, and that's exactly what I did. I threw myself into any job I could find. Day shifts, night shifts, it didn't matter. I took whatever kept me busy. I worked in warehouses, made deliveries, even did freelance tech gigs when I could. Physically, I was drained, but mentally, I was too numb to care. I refused to check social media. I refused to wonder what Amber was doing or if she ever thought about me. I even refused to let her name cross my mind. Relationships, they weren't even a consideration. I didn't want to hear about love or dating or anything remotely close to it. My focus was simple, me. Making money, securing my future, becoming someone who would never be left behind again. I had always been smart with money, but now I took it to another level. So every dollar I earned had a purpose. Half went toward improving myself, and the other half went into investments. I devoured books on finance, studied the stock market, and soaked up every bit of knowledge I could find. And slowly, I started seeing results. After a few months, I was able to move into my own place. It wasn't much, just a small apartment, but it was mine. No more crashing on couches. No more temporary living. 2 years flew by in a blur. The pain that once consumed me had faded into something distant, something that no longer controlled me. Looking back, I realized Amber had done me a favor. If she hadn't walked away that night, I might have never walked toward the life I was meant to have. And then, out of nowhere, the past came knocking. I was at the mall, running a quick errand, not expecting to see anyone I knew, especially not someone connected to Amber. But as I turned a corner near the food court, I locked eyes with a familiar face. At first, it didn't register. Then it hit me. Sophie, one of Amber's old friends. My first instinct was hesitation. The last time I had heard her name, Amber, was accusing her of trying to steal me. Back then, I believed Amber, trusted her without question. I even remember thinking Sophie was a snake, someone trying to sabotage my relationship. But standing there now, looking at her, she didn't seem like someone who had done anything wrong. She smiled, a little surprised. "Wow, Logan. Never thought I'd run into you here." I nodded, still processing. "Yeah, been a while." For a second, neither of us knew how to act. There was this weird silence between us. Not hostility, not awkwardness, just uncertainty. We had barely spoken back then. Amber had made sure of that. But then Sophie broke the tension. "Got time for a coffee?" I hesitated. At worst, it would be an uncomfortable conversation. At best, maybe I'd finally get some answers to things I had never thought to question before. "Why not?" I said. So we grabbed a table at a small cafe in the mall. And that's when I learned the truth. Sophie didn't sugarcoat it. She got straight to the point. Sophie didn't hold back. She looked me right in the eye and said, "I always felt like Amber. Never appreciated you. That's why we stopped being friends." That threw me. Because that was not the version of events Amber had given me. I leaned in, curiosity and confusion tightening in my chest. "What do you mean?" And that's when Sophie laid everything out. She told me how she had confronted Amber, about the way she treated me, how selfish she was in our relationship, how little she seemed to value my time or my feelings. But instead of listening, Amber flipped it on her, twisting the entire situation until Sophie became the villain. She accused Sophie of trying to steal me for herself, spreading the lie so fast that by the time Sophie could even react, their entire friend group had already turned against her. The more Sophie spoke, the more everything started clicking into place. Amber had lied. She had spun a story where she was the victim and made Sophie look like the enemy. And I had bought into it. Completely. For years, I had convinced myself that I knew Amber, that I understood who she was at her core. But sitting across from Sophie, listening to the truth unfold, I realized how much of Amber's version of reality I had blindly accepted. It wasn't just about that night she chose a party over me. It was a pattern. Amber had a way of keeping her hands clean while throwing other people under the bus. And the worst part? I had played right into it. For the first time, I told Sophie everything, how I had planned to propose, how Amber had ruined it, how I packed up my life and walked away without looking back. She just listened, nodding, letting me talk without cutting in or offering empty reassurances. It felt good to say it out loud, to someone who actually knew the kind of person Amber was. And for the first time in a long time, I didn't feel stupid for believing the lies. I just felt relieved to finally know the truth. From that day on, Sophie and I stayed in touch. There was something easy about talking to her. Maybe because she had been burned by Amber, too. Or maybe because she didn't expect anything from me. We started hanging out more, grabbing lunch, catching a movie, just enjoying the company. At first, I kept my guard up. The idea of starting something new, of trusting someone again, made me hesitate. But Sophie never pushed. She never asked for more than I was ready to give. And because of that, for the first time in years, I felt like I could breathe. One Sunday afternoon, I had just finished cleaning up my apartment. The air was filled with the smell of fresh coffee, and I was in a good mood. Sophie had texted earlier, saying she was bringing over something she had cooked. She did that sometimes, showing up with homemade meals, insisting I eat something that wasn't takeout or frozen food. I never told her how much that small gesture meant to me. So when the doorbell rang, I didn't even think twice. I walked over, expecting to see her standing there with a warm smile and a food container in her hands. But it wasn't Sophie. It was Amber. For a second, my mind refused to process what I was seeing. She hadn't changed. She stood there, hesitant, unsure of herself. And the first words out of my mouth weren't a greeting. Not an insult either. Just a flat, emotionless question. "How did you find me?" She opened her mouth as if to explain, but I didn't care. Whatever excuse she had, I wasn't interested. I shook my head and said, "Leave," just like that, because she had no business being here, and I wanted her gone. Right there in front of me, she broke down. The tears came hard and fast, her body shaking as she sobbed. She clutched her chest like the pain was physically crushing her. Through the broken cries, she begged for forgiveness, told me she had made the biggest mistake of her life. She admitted it, finally, that she had treated me horribly, that she had taken me for granted, that she should have never let me go. She said nothing had been the same without me, that after I left, her whole life fell apart. She looked up at me with swollen, tear-filled eyes, searching my face for some kind of sympathy, some sign that I still cared. But I felt nothing. I just stood there, staring at her. I had imagined this moment 1,000 times. The day she would come crawling back, the things I would say if she ever dared to show up again. But now that it was happening, all those words, they didn't matter anymore. But now that it was happening, now that she was standing there in front of me, pleading and broken, I felt nothing. No anger, no satisfaction, just an overwhelming sense of indifference. I opened my mouth to tell her to leave, to finally close this chapter once and for all. But before I could speak, the sound of footsteps made us both turn. Sophie. She was walking up the steps, carrying a container of homemade food, her smile warm and effortless. She looked radiant, confident, unbothered, a stark contrast to the mess standing in front of me. Amber's breath hitched the moment she saw her. Her bloodshot eyes widened in disbelief, her brain struggling to catch up. I could almost hear the gears turning as she pieced everything together. I didn't hesitate. I stepped forward, wrapped an arm around Sophie, and kissed her gently on the cheek. "Welcome," I said, my voice steady. Sophie smiled, completely unfazed by Amber's presence. That was the thing about Sophie. She never had to try too hard. She was just enough exactly as she was. Amber took a shaky step back, her expression twisting into something between heartbreak and humiliation. Without another word, I took Sophie's hand, stepped inside, and shut the door behind us. And then I locked it. I didn't check the peephole to see if Amber was still standing there. I didn't wait for her footsteps to fade. I was done. She had made her choice 2 years ago. Now it was my turn. Looking back, I realized something. Pain is one hell of a teacher. The night Amber chose that party over me, it felt like my entire world had collapsed. I spent hours questioning everything. Was I too clingy? Too demanding? Was I simply not enough for her? But the truth? I was never the problem. She just didn't value me the way I valued her. And that night, as I lay awake with my chest feeling like it was caving in, I had no idea that the best decision I would ever make was just around the corner. Walking away from her was the hardest thing I had ever done. But it also saved me. And life has a funny way of balancing things out, doesn't it? After I left, I focused on myself. I worked hard, invested wisely, and built a life I could be proud of. Meanwhile, Amber jumped straight into another relationship, one that suited her perfectly. Party guy, someone who lived fast, thrived on chaos, and kept the good times rolling. At first, I'm sure it seemed like she had everything she wanted, the thrill, the excitement, the never-ending adrenaline rush. But reality has a way of catching up. That guy wasn't just a party animal. He was an abusive one. He drank too much, and when he did, he turned violent. Their relationship became a toxic cycle of yelling, fights, and drama. It was chaos. It was destruction. And eventually, it all fell apart. And when there was nothing left, when she had nowhere else to turn, that's when she showed up at my door, crying, begging for forgiveness. But by then, it was too late. I had moved on. I had grown. And most importantly, I had learned one of the most valuable lessons of my life. Real love doesn't need to be forced. If someone wants to be in your life, they'll act like it. They won't treat you like an afterthought. They won't make you compete for their attention. And now, I want to hear from you guys. Was I too harsh? Did she deserve it? If someone betrayed your trust like that and then came crawling back, what would you do? Have you ever been taken for granted, only for them to realize your worth when it was too late? Let's talk about it in the comments. I know a lot of you have been through something like this. You're not alone.